Hello and welcome to the Sports and Stuff show. I'm Patrick Haggerty, your host, and I'm going to be talking about the football playoffs mere minutes after the Eagles lose to the Buccaneers. So the Super Wild Card Weekend is officially come to a close. And we have our division round matchups, which will be Lions versus the Buccaneers, the 49ers versus the Packers. Go Pack, go. It's wearing a cheese head. And it'll be Chiefs-Bills. And it'll be Ravens-Texans. Nice. As a Giants fan, this weekend went perfectly because the Cowboys and Eagles both lost. Not only did they lose, they both lost embarrassingly. They both lost big. Cowboys brought it to within a respectable looking score, but was ultimately a humongous blowout. Very embarrassing for them, which was very uplifting for us Giants fans. And the Eagles just straight up got whooped, got undressed, as I like to call it. What do we got here? Is this a little thing? Got a little thing here? What do we got here? Anything on here? What is this? I got a little piece of string. I'm trying to get it. Can I get it? I'm trying to get it. Oh, I got it. All right. Some hair attached to my cheese head, but I got it. So this is the getting hair that it's attached to my cheese head show, and as always, I was successful. But yeah, the weekend went perfectly for me as a fan. I don't gamble, but it went perfectly for me as a Giants fan. Yeah, we'll break down all the games. It might be a shorter episode because I just wanted to talk about the playoffs right away as they were ending. As the first round of games was ending, the Super Wild Card Weekend, the 6 games. 6 games these days. I think this is the third year of there being 6 games. And it was good. I'm starting to get used to it. When it first started, I felt like it was too much. I felt like it was too many games. I think last year was the first year that they had a Monday night game as opposed to having 3 Saturday and then 3 Sunday. They scheduled 2 Saturday, 3 Sunday, and then 1 on Monday, which I think was a big positive in terms of the scheduling. It ended up being 2-2-2 because the Bills game got snowed out, so they had to reschedule that one as well. But the 2-3-1 is a lot more palatable. It makes a lot of sense. Monday night football game for the playoffs is a little weird. Definitely something to get used to for fans of the NFL. But it does make sense because a Saturday 1 o'clock game, which is what I seem to remember them having that first year of the Super Wild Card Weekend, Saturday 1 o'clock game, that game, nobody's watching that game. That game is a terribly timed game. I'm not watching that game. I'm going to scratch my head a little bit, but the cheesehead's staying. The cheesehead's absolutely staying. But yeah, so the scheduling was good. This is as into the football playoffs as I've been in a while. I think a lot of people say that every year because a lot of people get really into the football playoffs from one year to the next. They're either kind of into the playoffs or really, really into the playoffs. This year, I've felt pretty locked in because it was really good matchups. As I said on the previous episode of Sports and Stuff, on Sports and Stuff episode 2, I mentioned how the matchups were all really good. So I wanted to the 2 games that I cared about the least were the 2 games that I made the least of a point to watch. We'll start with one of those games, which is the first game of this weekend, which was Texans versus the Browns. Texans-Browns, did not care about that game. Going in, the Texans, though, showed that they have that guy Stroud, the quarterback. They showed that they're legit. They showed that they... the way I thought of it as I was watching, I only watched the last quarter or so, but what I saw was you have the Texans, they're more live of an underdog than I expected them to be. So they're going to go face the Ravens in the next round, and we'll talk more about the matchups going into the next round at the end of the episode, but Texans going into the next part of the playoffs, they feel like they could be the type of team that clips one of these really good teams, a la the Ravens, and ends up changing a lot of what we expect from the playoffs. So the Texans look good. They look like a legitimate team, more so than I expected them to look like going into these playoffs, with a lot of really, really good teams, a lot of teams that have been really good for a few years, and then a few teams that became great just this year. The Texans didn't feel like they were in that category, but they have a great quarterback, which is always what sends a team from being kind of below average, mediocre type team to being a active underdog that could surprise people. Is if you have a really good quarterback, then it becomes that much more likely. So that game was more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be not interesting at all, but once the Texans showed what they can do, and more specifically Stroud showed what he can do, that game became a little bit more interesting to me. The game that night was Chiefs-Dolphins, which was the game of Saturday that I cared about a whole lot more. Chiefs-Dolphins ended up not being a very good game, but it was still an exciting instance of kind of playoff fortitude and playoff muscle memory by Patrick Mahomes specifically. Even in a very cold, crazy cold game, you have Patrick Mahomes kind of going from being kind of up and down, looking good, making the plays enough to win some games in the regular season, to then looking like a star again. He looked great, and it reminded me a lot of, I mentioned this to some select few, I mentioned how Mahomes reminded me a lot of Tom Brady in that game, especially, I guess, late career Tom Brady, but really just Tom Brady during the entirety of his career, where Tom Brady would have plenty of seasons where in the regular season he was good. Wasn't great. He was good in the regular season. And then come the postseason, he just turns it on. And that's what Mahomes looked like in that game against the Dolphins, is that, yeah, he had a good enough season to get the 3 seed. Maybe even he could have dipped into the 4 seed, but playoffs came and he turns it on. And so Mahomes more and more is showing that he has that gene that Tom Brady had during the course of his career, and he just kind of and as far as the Dolphins go, they just couldn't play in that kind of cold. It was -9 degrees towards the end of the game. The Dolphins obviously play in Miami, and they're just a speed team that you can't expect a team that's not used to playing in cold like that to be able to play in cold like that. I always think going into a game that, wait a second, these are all NFL players. If they had been playing, all they would have had to do is be drafted by some other team, and they would have had that kind of experience. And the question being in my mind is, does one season really make that big of a difference? Because a lot of the best players are first season with that team, or first season in the league in general. But somehow that is enough. If you're playing your home games in Miami and then even the Chiefs players play their home games in Kansas City, and obviously, or not every game was as cold as this past one in Kansas City, it being -9 degrees. But if you're playing in a few 20-degree games and maybe a couple games that got into the teens into December, maybe even some fairly cold games in November, they're gradually getting to the point where, yeah, we can play in -9. It's cold. It's cold for anybody, but they at least have some experience playing in something like that kind of cold. The Miami Dolphins, maybe on the road they played 2 games that cold at most when on the road just by happenstance, and the Chiefs probably played 6 games that were colder than the coldest game Miami had played all year at least. So it makes sense, and part of me was thinking, well, no, the Dolphins are good, they'll figure it out, but there is a chance that was never going to happen. The next day, you had the Bills and the Steelers get snowed out. There was like 3 blizzards all at once or something, like some kind of snow monster happened in Buffalo, so that game wasn't able to happen. The governor of New York actually said, no, that this can't happen. There's no way that anybody can drive to the game, so it's not happening. So that happened the next day, which means that the first game on Sunday was the 4:00 game, which was Packers-Cowboys, which was definitely among the games that I cared about the most. You had rooting against the Cowboys, and then later on the Eagles. Rooting against the Cowboys and Eagles were my biggest rooting interests. Everything else, if it had happened the way, then again, I was rooting for the Chiefs. Chiefs won. And then, so it started off well. And then Cowboys-Packers, man, that went great. That was a lot of fun to watch. It's interesting because at this point, including this game, including Packers-Cowboys, there was none of the games were any good. All the games were blowouts. But since I was rooting so heavily against the Cowboys, I was excited the entire time that it was happening. I was thinking, man, I hope the Packers keep scoring and keep embarrassing the Cowboys and make it so that all their fans are really unhappy. That was my main goal going into that game, was that the Cowboys would lose, and not just lose, but kind of lose miserably, and make it so that their fans couldn't even begin to think that their season was a success at all. Because it wasn't, because the Cowboys should have won that game. The Cowboys in Dallas going against a 7-seed Packers team that had no business really even making the playoffs, let alone being they were not an active underdog. They were not a team that was considered to be really have a chance at doing much in the playoffs. And they didn't just lose. It's one thing, yeah, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you make just one mistake and maybe one ref bonkers call, but they got destroyed. They just looked terrible, and it was a lot of fun to watch. It was very, very entertaining for me. Yeah, so that made it so that the weekend could have been great then. That was, statistically, an interesting stat. That was the first time a 7-seed has won a playoff game. I think it's only the 3rd year that the 7-seed has existed, but, or maybe it's the 4th year, but the 7-seed had never won a game. The 7-seed beating the 2-seed, and for it to be the Cowboys as that team that was the first 2-seed to lose to a 7-seed is wonderful. So that was that game. The following game was the Sunday night game between Lions and Rams. You had Stafford versus Goff, but on the wrong teams, right? Stafford got, pushed his way out of Detroit, kind of. It was an amicable breakup. The Lions were still bad at the time, and Stafford kind of wanted to go check out a winner, but Goff got pushed away from the Rams, so that was less amicable. And they ended up being, obviously, Stafford went right to the Rams, but Goff had a little bit more of a roundabout journey to the Lions. The Lions end up winning that game in the only close game of the weekend. Although I'm kind of blanking on how the Bills-Steelers game went. It went from being not close at all to kind of close a little bit at times, and then it eventually the Bills kind of took over. But we're not on that game yet. We are on the Lions-Rams. So that game was really good. That game came down to the wire, and there was part of me that was thinking, oh, it'd be cool if the Matthew Stafford Rams kind of had another push. They just won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And it would have been cool in its own right if the Rams had another run in them, which could have been, people would have been talking about, oh, maybe they have an opportunity to be kind of a mini dynasty themselves. They had one down year in between a Super Bowl championship if they make another run here and then go on to make some more runs in the future. Then maybe they could have had some discussion, not of actually being a dynasty, but of being a legitimate, era of this for this Rams team. But they lost, which, seeing the Lions fans and how excited they were that the Lions finally won a playoff game after 30 years. They hadn't won a playoff game since the early 90s. That was cool. If the Rams had won, that would have been gross. If the Rams with Matthew Stafford, and I mean gross in a bad way, that if Matthew Stafford had led the Rams to beat the Detroit Lions in Detroit, that would have been pretty gnarly. That would have been kind of the perfect villain story, if for those of you who like a villain story. But I don't know if that's what I wanted, and especially after seeing in the middle of the game, during the game, I didn't really care. It was a good game. I was watching it because it was a good game. I didn't really care about who won or lost, but seeing Detroit win made me think, oh, I'm glad Detroit won, because the fans deserve it. They've had some bad teams. They went 0-16 in my lifetime, so the fans have earned it. They deserve a good stretch, and not only did they win that game, they have another home game coming up, which is pretty cool. The next day, which is today, presumably, it's not today much longer as of right now, as of the recording of this episode. The Bills and Steelers. I was rooting for the Bills. So another instance of the game going the way I wanted, because the Bills beat the Steelers. Got to root for New York, even though I am a cheesehead in many ways, but I'm a New Yorker at heart. I'm a Giants fan wearing a cheese head. That's, the Giants beat the Packers this year, so if the Packers win the Super Bowl, then the Giants would be the rightful owner of the Super Bowl Lombardi trophy. So in many ways, the Packers winning would be the best thing for Giants fans, as it were. So the Bills beat the Steelers. It did get close at times. The Steelers made a couple runs. Josh Allen is very cool. I like Josh Allen. I like the Bills. I guess we can talk a little bit about the matchup that follows: Bills versus Chiefs. And finally, now the Bills will host the Chiefs. They've only played 2 games in the playoffs
Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have only played 2 games in the playoffs. It feels like more. It feels like the rivalry has been more significant than that. It's probably just because there have been some really big regular season games, and then even not last year. Well, yeah, even last year and the year before. So the year before that, I think it was Chiefs Bengals having a cool matchup themselves, but felt like it should have been Chiefs Bills. And then even last year, I think it was something similar where the Chiefs, where it wasn't Chiefs Bills, but there was that inkling. It was like, oh, is it going to be Chiefs Bills again? And then it wasn't. But this year it will. So and 3 is a lot. So now it's getting to the point where they've had a lot of big playoff games against each other. 3 is a lot. And what it reminds me of is back when Peyton Manning and Tom Brady used to play a lot against each other. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady won the first 2, I believe it was specifically the first 2, and both of those were in Foxborough in New England. And then finally, it feels like finally, because they also played each other in the regular season, so there's something to that. So there's probably some instances of, especially with those 2, Brady and Peyton, Brady getting the better of Peyton in the regular season as well. And then finally, when the game was in Indianapolis, that's when Peyton won. So if Josh Allen were to be able to win this coming week, it would have a similar feel because, hey, here's the playoff game, finally a home game for Josh Allen. And if he was able to win, it would feel like, well, that was the only thing stopping him all along. Maybe Josh Allen is just as good, and he just needed that home game. And hey, Mahomes, 2 Super Bowl championships, great. If Josh Allen can get his 1, then he's right on track. He's right behind him. Mahomes has also lost a Super Bowl and lost at least 1 AFC championship, so he's a little bit ahead. But that's gonna be a great game. That's gonna be my number 1 game to tune into just as a football fan. This number 2 would be Packers Cowboys Packers 49ers, because I like the Packers. I have some friends who are Packers fans, and as you can see, I'm an honorary Packers fan at times. So that'll be number 2. But I haven't even finished this weekend's worth of games. So we got to talk a little bit about Eagles Buccaneers. Eagles lost to the Bucs. Again, just capping off an absolutely perfect wild card weekend for me, a New Yorker and a New York Giants fan. Bills win, Cowboys lose, Eagles lose, Chiefs win. Who doesn't like a good dynasty? As long as it's not Tom Brady and the Patriots winning too much. Especially, I'm a New Yorker. I don't want Boston to win. Kansas City, fine. Kansas City can have some fun. So them winning is cool as well, and I enjoy it. You like seeing a good dynasty. I love Tiger Woods. I loved I liked the Lakers of the early thousands. I'm a Knicks fan because I'm a New York boy. But I don't mind a dynasty generally speaking, especially as a Yankees fan. Can't fault a dynasty for trying. But yeah, the Eagles lose, and they lose big, and that's just great. I want the Eagles to lose so big all the time that they have to tear down the stadium and move to Montreal. That's how badly I want the Eagles to lose. I want Philadelphia to lose the team and not gain it back, and then the Phillies and the Sixers as well. For them, I don't even mind those teams that much, but that's how much I don't like the Eagles. Is that I would like for the rest of their sports teams to have to move out of the city, and for the Philly sports fans to no longer have teams to root for. I think that would be best for everybody. But yeah, Eagles lose, which means the Bucs are moving on, which is wonderful. It's what a lovely time as a fan. Hey, none of the NFC. Hey, the Giants won 0 games, right, in the playoffs. Just the exact amount of playoff wins as the Cowboys and Eagles combined. So, as it were, the Giants had just as good a season as the Cowboys and Eagles by mathematics. Moving on, we'll talk a little bit about the divisional round. The divisional round's coming up now, and you have, what is it? Buccaneers versus the Lions. And you know what? I'm excited. It's not a sexy matchup, but you got Lions Buccaneers in Detroit. Baker Mayfield versus Goff. Cool. You got some that's some quarterbacks that I know, quarterbacks that people know. Baker Mayfield is fun to watch. Jared Goff is pretty milquetoast, but he's a quarterback who can huck the ball, and it's cool that they're going against each other, right? So it's not just it's the less than super attractive team versus some great team in one side of the bracket, and then the exact same thing in the other side of the bracket. It's actually, you got some NFC parity, which is kind of cool. Though the 49 and then 49ers Packers, and hey, I said this about the Packers last week this past weekend, and maybe it bodes well for them that I'm going to say this this weekend. I would be shocked if the 49ers do not destroy the Packers. I think that the 49ers are going to make it not a good game. I think the defense is going to really give the Packers a hard time, and then the offense is just going to kind of methodically just steamroll the Packers defense. It's not going to be boom, 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 but it's going to be touchdown here, a field goal there, and the Packers offense isn't going to be able to do anything. Something like 20-6 in that range. I think the Packers are going to have a hard time scoring, but hey, I said a very similar thing about the Packers against the Cowboys. I thought the Packers were going to lose that game. So maybe it's a good thing that I'm saying that the Packers are going to get destroyed by the Niners, which is what I think. And, with the Eagles being out and the Cowboys being out and who else? Oh, and the Lions beat the Rams. So the Cowboys and the Eagles being out, the sexy teams in the NFC have dwindled down to one, right? You have the 49ers are really, really good, and they were assumed to be the powerhouse of the conference going into the playoffs. Now you just have them going against the Packers as the 7th seed. The Lions are really good. So that would be the best NFC championship game in terms of pure talent. And hey, maybe it'll be Packers, Buccaneers, and I'm going to watch it. And everyone's going to watch it. And the Packers would be fun to have too. So it's either going to be the Packers or the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, which NFL was thinking, all right, that works. Both great national teams. And then the other team, I don't think they care. I guess the Lions, just because they're a really good team, and they've been really good all year, so that'd be fun to watch, and it'd be more interesting as a football fan, and also the fact that they haven't been in the playoffs or won a playoff game in so long makes it so that it's a more interesting story. The Buccaneers would be cool because Baker Mayfield's awesome, and Brady just retired, so that would be something. But I think the Lions would be a better story. So Lions, 49ers is probably what would be the best football game in the NFC. But I'll root for the Packers. I'll say it. I'm wearing a cheesehead. I'm rooting for the Packers. So let's have it be Packers-Lions, little NFC North rematch in the NFC Championship game. So that would be interesting as well. And what would be the other? So you have 49ers Bucks or Packers Bucks. It's all good. It's all good, baby. It's all good. AFC, a little bit more handsome. It's not always sexy. Sometimes it's handsome. It's also sexy. It's a handsome conference because you have Mahomes, so that helps a lot. And also you have Josh Allen. You have the obvious feud. You have the obvious rivalry between Mahomes and Allen. So Mahomes Allen, that's the game. That's the game. And then the other one is Ravens Texans, which is kind of cool actually, because you have Stroud, who's an up and coming rookie guy, and then the Ravens are just awesome. So the Ravens will be fun to watch. I'll root against that. My strongest rooting interest in terms of rooting against the team is going to be the Ravens, because I'm a salty Giants fan who still hasn't forgiven the Ravens for the 2000 Super Bowl, which I barely remember because I was 9 years old when that Super Bowl happened. It was the 2001 Super Bowl, the 2000 season. I had just turned 9 a few months prior. And but I recall being pretty upset that the Giants lost. So I'm pretty upset with the Ravens, and I haven't forgiven them, and I never will. So I'll be rooting for the Texans in that game. Let's go Stroud. Let's go. Come on, Houston. It's the only time I'll root for Houston as a Yankees fan. I do not like Houston. But in this instance, let's go Texans, because no Ravens. And then Chiefs-Bills. That's just gonna be a great game. I'm cool with whoever wins, but I guess I'll root for the Bills because it'll be cool to see the Bills do something. Especially as a New Yorker, gotta root for the Bills. But that's gonna be a great game. I'm looking forward to that game. And now I can give different picks going forward. So I'll root for the Bills, and I'll say the Bills will win that game, and I guess I'll say the Bills will win the Super Bowl because if I'm rooting for the Bills. But I think the Chiefs are gonna. Oh man, that's gonna be a great game. I don't even care. I don't really care who's gonna win that game because it's gonna be so awesome. Bills Chiefs in Buffalo now. Ooh, that's so cool. In the NFC, I don't think it's not much has changed in terms of what I think is gonna happen. I thought the Cowboys were gonna win. That's for sure. I figured the Bucs had a good chance at winning against the Eagles. So I think everything else kind of happened the way I thought it was gonna. The Chiefs beat the Dolphins, the Bills beat the Steelers. All the home teams won. The Lions beat the Rams, sure. So all the home teams won. All the home teams won, aside from the Cowboys, which is perfect. So what a fantastic little statement that is, that the Cowboys were the only home team to lose. And they went undefeated at home during the regular season. So it was really embarrassing for them, which is, man, that's great. It's lovely. It's lovely for the Dallas Cowboys to be embarrassed. And maybe they have to make like big changes because they can't win a playoff game even when they're really good during the regular season. And the Eagles, maybe they'll have to make changes. The Eagles probably not. They just had a bad stretch. But the Cowboys are just showing who they are. So the Cowboys are showing who they are. So they might have to make wholesale changes. They might have to fire their coach and fire coordinators and get rid of certain players. And then maybe they'll have a really bad season next year. And then the Giants are going to draft a quarterback, and they're going to be really good, and they're going to win the Super Bowl. This is the year. So 2024 is the year. It's the year of the season that the Giants are going to get the 1 seed, and then they're going to win the Super Bowl in that season. So this is the year where in the season that the Giants are going to win the Super Bowl. Which, hey, you heard it here first, folks. But that's it. I just wanted to talk about the football playoffs. I'll do another episode next week. Oh, and this might be the last episode where I'm by myself because I'm got another microphone coming. So that's pretty big. Got another microphone coming, so I'll have some guests, and they'll be talking sports and stuff. We'll get into some other stuff as we move, but it's gonna be. I mean, I like talking sports, so this gives me an excuse to bring any conversation back to sports, which is what I do anyway. That's what I would do even if the podcast was about, or the show, even if the show was about something other than sports, I would bring it back to sports, and it would be bizarre. But now this show is about sports, so it makes sense that I'm bringing it back to sports. But that's it. That's the episode. We'll call it right there. I'm Patrick Haggerty. Thanks for watching. Like it and stuff. And good night.